I was halfway through making coffee when someone pounded on my door, hard, at 4 in the morning. It wasn't the kind of knock that asked politely to be answered. It was the kind that screamed something's wrong. I froze with the spoon still in my hand, heart jumping so violently I could hear it echoing in my ears. Another 3 knocks, rapid, desperate. I walked toward the door, barefoot, the floorboards groaning beneath me. My apartment was still half, dark, the dim light from the hallway leaking in under the door. When I looked through the peephole, Ethan's face filled it. Distorted, frightened, pale. Ethan Reeves, my neighbor from across the hall. He was shaking. His hair was soaked, maybe from sweat, maybe from the rain I hadn't even realized was falling outside. His lips parted as though he'd been running for miles. I opened the door just a crack. "Ethan, what the hell? Don't go to work today," he said. His voice was hoarse, trembling. "Please, just trust me." I blinked at him. What? Why? He didn't answer immediately. His eyes darted down the hallway, then back at me, then down again, as if he expected something, or someone to appear. The fluorescent light above us flickered twice, buzzing. For a moment his face looked even paler. "Ethan, you're scaring me." I whispered. He swallowed hard. "You'll understand by noon," he said quietly, then turned and walked away. He didn't look back. He just disappeared into his apartment and slammed the door shut so hard the frame trembled. And then there was silence. I stood there barefoot in my robe, staring at the wood grain of his door, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My coffee was cooling on the counter behind me. The only sound left was the hum of my refrigerator and the faint, distant whistle of the wind outside. When you live alone, silence sometimes feels like a living thing. It moves, it breathes. That morning it felt like it was watching me. I shut my own door and locked it. Twice. It's probably nothing, I told myself. Maybe he's drunk. Maybe he's having a breakdown. But even as I tried to laugh it off, I couldn't shake the way he'd said it. "You'll understand by noon." By noon, what was supposed to happen? I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 4:07 a.m. I texted him out of instinct. "Ethan, are you okay? What's going on?" No response. I waited 5 minutes, 10, nothing. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to work. Not yet anyway, not until I knew what this was about. As the sun crept over the buildings, I tried to calm myself down. I turned on the TV, hoping for noise, but every channel felt off. Too cheerful, too fake. I turned it off again and just sat there in the quiet, sipping cold coffee and staring at my front door. If this story already has you hooked, then you're exactly where you need to be. This is her Retaliation, the place where every what if turns real. Subscribe now, hit the bell icon, and tell me in the comments. What would you do if your neighbor showed up at 4 a.m. and told you not to go to work? The clock crawled towards 7. My phone buzzed once. A calendar reminder. Shift starts at 8:30. I stared at it for a long time. My office was 20 minutes away. Marketing firm downtown. Nothing dangerous about that, right? I almost convinced myself Ethan was just being paranoid. But then I thought about the way his pupils had blown wide, the tremor in his hands. You'll understand by noon. Maybe it was some gas leak or power outage. Maybe he knew something about the building, but if that were true, why wouldn't he tell everyone else? By 8, curiosity outweighed fear. I dressed anyway, black blazer, jeans, boots, and told myself I'd just drive past the building. If it looked normal, I'd go in. But when I stepped into the hallway, Ethan's door was ajar. I froze. Ethan. No answer. The air felt cold, colder than it should have been. I pushed his door lightly with my fingers, and it creaked open just enough to see the dim shape of his living room. Lights off, curtains drawn. I could smell something metallic, faint but sharp, like pennies soaked in water. "Ethan." I said again, softer, nothing. My pulse thudded in my ears. I backed away, closed his door gently, and decided to head downstairs instead. The elevator took forever. When the doors finally opened, Mrs. Lang from 2B was already inside. She looked startled to see me. "Morning, Madeline," she said, clutching her dog's leash tightly. "You're up early." "Yeah," I muttered. Couldn't sleep. The dog, tiny thing, half Chihuahua, half terrorist, was shaking in her arms. Storm spooked her again. Mrs. Lang said, "She's been barking at your neighbor's door since 3. Poor thing's never like that." My stomach nodded. "Ethan's," she nodded. "You think he's all right?" I thought I heard him arguing with someone last night. Arguing? I forced a smile. I'm sure he's fine. But something about that didn't fit. Ethan lived alone. When I stepped outside, the sky was pale gray, clouds rolling low and heavy. It smelled like rain and exhaust. The city felt off balance, too quiet for a weekday. I slid into my car, started the engine, and sat there staring at my steering wheel. Go to work or don't. Finally, I decided to drive. Traffic was light. I passed the gas station, the bakery, the same bus stop where an old man always sold newspapers. Everything looked normal, perfectly normal. Until I reached the overpass, there were flashing lights ahead. At first, I thought it was a fender bender, but as I slowed, I saw police tape stretched across the intersection. 2 cruisers, an ambulance. And beyond them, something that made my stomach drop. A silver Toyota Corolla, my exact model, my exact color. The front was crushed in. Steam rose from the hood. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, and inside was a woman with long brown hair slumped against the airbag. My hands began to tremble on the steering wheel. No, it couldn't be a police officer motioned for me to turn around, blocking off the road. I obeyed, pulling into a side street, heart hammering. From that distance, I couldn't see her face clearly, but the resemblance was enough to twist my stomach into knots. If I had left at my usual time. If I hadn't listened to Ethan, I swallowed hard and parked near a coffee shop. My throat was dry. I sat there, staring out the windshield, trying to breathe. You'll understand by noon. What the hell did he know? By 11, the news hit social media. A fatal accident on West 9th Avenue. A drunk driver had run a red light, killing a woman instantly. Witnesses said the car looked almost identical to mine. The woman's ID hadn't been released yet. My stomach turned. I called the police station, trying to report what I'd seen. How my neighbor had warned me not to go, how it might be connected. But the dispatcher just told me to stay home until an officer could visit. So I did. I paced my apartment for what felt like hours. Ethan's door stayed closed. The hallway stayed silent. I kept glancing through my peephole, waiting for movement, but nothing ever came. At 12:20 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, voice shaky. Hello? Is this Madeline Carter? Yes. This is Officer Reynolds with the City Police Department. Are you at your residence right now? Yes. Why is this about the crash? There was a pause. A long one. I heard papers rustling on his end, a faint sigh. Then, ma'am, he said slowly, we need you to come down to the station as soon as possible. We found something in the vehicle. It's registered to your address. I froze. My address? Yes, ma'am. The car involved in the accident. It's registered to you. My breath caught. I looked out my window. My silver Corolla sat exactly where I'd parked it the night before, untouched. That's impossible, I whispered. My car's right here. Another pause. Then the officer said, ma'am, we need you to come in right now and bring identification. The driver had your photo ID in her wallet. My knees went weak. My what? But before I could say more, something slammed against my apartment door from the hallway. 1, 2, 3 sharp knocks. I turned, heart in my throat. The sound came again, lower this time. Deliberate, and then a voice, quiet but unmistakable. Madeline, it said, don't open the door. It was Ethan. Madeline, don't open the door. Ethan's voice came through the wood like a trembling whisper wrapped in panic. For a second, I thought I was imagining it, my brain replaying his voice from earlier. But then the doorknob rattled softly, just once, like he was checking if it was locked. My throat went dry. Ethan, no response. The air in my apartment felt heavy, pressing against my lungs. I crept toward the door, my bare feet silent on the floor. The hallway outside was quiet except for the distant hum of the elevator. Ethan, what's going on? I said, keeping my voice low. Again, silence. I put my eye to the peephole. The hallway looked empty. The flickering light above his apartment door was still pulsing weakly, the same as before. Ethan. I tried again, then his voice came, closer this time, hoarse. Don't open it, not for anyone, even if they say my name. My heart stuttered. What are you talking about? He didn't answer. I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall, then the soft creak of his own door closing. And then, nothing. I stood there for nearly a full minute, hand frozen on the lock. My pulse was so loud it felt like it was shaking my ribs. Finally, I stepped back and exhaled. What the hell is happening? I whispered to no one. That was when I noticed something, a faint shadow under my door, like someone was standing just outside again. I froze, leaning closer. The shadow didn't move, then scrape. It sounded like metal dragging against wood. Something being slid under the door. I jumped back, every nerve on fire. A small white envelope lay half, pushed into my apartment. The paper was creased, smudged with dirt. I stared at it, my hands trembling, before slowly bending down to pick it up. The flap wasn't sealed. Inside was a single folded note. 3 words, trust him completely. No signature. I just stood there, staring at the paper. Ethan had warned me once, now this. I wanted to believe it was some elaborate prank, but my gut told me it wasn't. There was something deeper here, something pulling invisible strings around me. I grabbed my phone and tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I texted him again. Ethan, I just got a note. Did you send it? No reply. I was about to text again when a soft ping came through. A message from an unknown number. Stop trying to reach him. They're watching. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, feeling the edges of panic creep in. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, but before I could reply, another message appeared. If you value your life, stay inside until 3:00. After that, go to the basement alone. I swallowed hard. Who is this? I typed, what's happening? No answer. The clock on my stove read 12:44 p.m. The police had said to come to the station immediately, but the person texting me, whoever it was, seemed to know what was going on. And somehow it tied back to Ethan. I glanced toward my window. Across the street, a black SUV was parked, engine running. 2 figures sat inside, unmoving, watching. I felt it. Something inside me screamed not to leave. I closed the blinds. Time crawled. Every sound felt amplified. The tick of the clock, the faint vibration of my fridge, the wind pressing against the glass. My nerves were raw. At 1:07 p.m., I heard footsteps again. Slow, steady, coming down the hall. I didn't move. A soft knock echoed 2 taps, Madeline. It was a woman's voice this time, calm, professional. This is Officer Reynolds, she said. We spoke earlier. I'm here to escort you to the station. Relief flooded through me, but only for a second. Because Ethan's words came back like a whisper in my ear. Don't open it, not for anyone, even if they say my name. I swallowed. Can I see your badge? I asked through the door, a pause, then, of course, something metallic scraped against the peephole, blocking my view. My pulse kicked into overdrive. Ma'am, the voice said again, please open up. I backed away. There was no badge, just darkness covering the peephole. Then a second voice joined hers. Male, deeper. Madeline, open the door. We don't have time for this. I ran to my window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see the SUV still parked outside. The driver's door was open now, no one inside. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Go away. I yelled. The knocking grew harder. Madeline, open the damn door. Then complete silence. I didn't breathe for at least 30 seconds. Then slowly I looked through the peephole again. Empty hallway, no one there. But on the floor, where the envelope had been earlier, lay something else. A photo. It was an image of me, taken from behind just minutes ago. I was standing at my window, pulling the curtain aside. My hands went ice cold. I slammed the chain lock into place, grabbed my phone, and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Madeline Carter. I said, voice trembling. Someone's outside my apartment pretending to be police. Ma'am, the operator interrupted. We have officers en route to your building already. What, why? Another pause. Because there's been a second accident. We believe your neighbor Ethan Reeves is involved. I froze. What do you mean, involved? I can't share more over the phone. The operator said, please remain where you are until officers arrive. Lock your doors and do not engage with anyone outside. Click, the line went dead. I don't remember sitting down, but I was suddenly on the floor, knees to my chest, phone still clutched in my hand. My whole body shook. Ethan, the warning, the note, the message. The photo, none of it made sense, and then, like some cruel echo footsteps again, Not from the hallway, from inside the apartment. I froze. My eyes darted toward the kitchen. The sound was faint but distinct, low creaks on the floorboards coming from the far side near the pantry. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, an umbrella, and inched forward. Who's there? My voice cracked, no answer, then a whisper. So quiet I almost thought I'd imagined it. Don't be scared, Madeline. I turned sharply. Nothing there. The footsteps stopped. I edged closer to the pantry door. My fingers trembled on the handle. I yanked it open, empty, but the small window above the sink was unlocked. Something I never did. The cold breeze made the curtains sway gently, like someone had just slipped out. My heart hammered so violently I could barely think. I shut and locked it, then backed away, trembling. That was when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You weren't supposed to open that. I dropped the phone, then it buzzed again. They'll be there soon. Don't let them in. At 2:47 p.m., the building's fire alarm suddenly erupted. Shrill piercing echoing through the halls. I flinched as red lights strobed across the ceiling. Someone banged on my door again. Harder this time. Madeline, it's the fire department. You have to evacuate. My brain spun. The alarms, the knocks, the messages. What was real, I yelled through the door. Show me your badge under the peephole. The voice hesitated. Ma'am, please, the building, badge first. No response. I stepped back, clutching the umbrella like a weapon. Then through the peephole a shadow moved. Tall, broad, shifting side to side like it was testing the weight of something. A moment later, metal struck the door near the lock. Once, twice, someone was trying to pry it open. I screamed, stop. I called the police. They're coming. The banging stopped instantly, then silence. Smoke began to seep under the door. Or maybe it was fog. I couldn't tell. It didn't smell like fire. It smelled sweet, chemical wrong. I stumbled back, covering my mouth with my sleeve. The fire alarm cut off abruptly. Only the sound of my own heartbeat remained, and then footsteps again from the hall, but this time slow, deliberate, heavy. They stopped right outside my door. 3 soft knocks. Madeline. A voice said, calm, male, low, it's me. My chest tightened. Ethan, yes, he said. No. I whispered, you're lying. You're dead. I need you to listen. The people outside. They're not real police. They're part of it. Part of what? I shouted, trembling. He didn't answer. Just said at 3:00, go to the basement. Alone. Don't bring your phone. Then I heard him walk away again. I stared at the clock. 2:59. 1 minute. My mind screamed to stay put, but my body moved anyway. I grabbed my jacket, left the phone behind, and opened the door. The hallway was drenched in flickering red emergency light. The air felt thick and humid. Every door was closed except Ethan's. It was open just a sliver. I turned the other way and headed for the stairwell. The basement smelled of damp concrete and dust. The hum of the building's generators filled the space. I looked around, half expecting him to appear. Ethan, I whispered, no answer. Only a single light bulb swung gently overhead. I stepped forward, and my shoe brushed against something on the floor. I looked down, another envelope, inside, another note. You were supposed to die today. My pulse spiked, and then the light bulb flickered once, twice. Then went out, pitch black, footsteps again, behind me. I turned slowly, my breath shaking. Ethan. A voice whispered right beside my ear. Too close. No, he's gone. The voice was right behind me, too close, so close I could feel the warmth of breath against the side of my neck. I spun around instinctively, swinging my arm through the dark, hitting nothing but air. My pulse thundered in my ears. The basement swallowed every sound. Even my breathing felt muted, like the air was thicker down here. Who's there? My voice cracked, no response. The darkness felt alive, shifting. I couldn't tell if my eyes were adjusting or if the shadows were moving on their own. Then faintly, somewhere ahead of me, a soft drip. Drip, drip. I took a step forward. The floor was slick and uneven. I reached out blindly, brushing my fingers against a wall. Rough concrete, cold to the touch. Ethan. I whispered again, even though I knew the voice had said he was gone. A quiet chuckle echoed from somewhere deep in the dark. Not loud, not manic, Just a low, dry sound like someone laughing under their breath. Who are you? I snapped, my voice trembling. Silence again. Then, you shouldn't have listened. I froze. The voice wasn't coming from one place. It seemed to shift, behind me, above me, next to my ear. Every time I turned, it felt like it slid just out of reach. What do you want? A faint metallic click answered me, like something unlocking, and then a light blinked on at the far end of the room, dim yellowish, swinging gently from a wire. It illuminated the old service corridor that led deeper under the building. In the light's halo, I saw a shape, a man, tall, still, facing away from me. He was wearing Ethan's jacket. Ethan, he didn't move. I stepped closer cautiously. My hands were shaking. Ethan, is that you? What's happening? He tilted his head slightly to one side like he was listening to something. Then he turned around. It was Ethan, but not the Ethan I knew. His eyes looked wrong, too wide, unfocused, pupils blown out like he was staring into something no one else could see. His face was pale, drained, streaked with dirt and blood. Madeline, he said softly. My knees almost buckled. You're alive. He nodded slowly. I told you not to go to work. I didn't. I stayed. Ethan, what's going on? Who's doing this? He blinked once. They're inside the walls. What? They listened through the wiring, he said, voice trembling. Through the pipes, that's how they know who's home. I stared at him, trying to understand. Ethan, you're scaring me. He stepped closer. You have to leave this place. I tried. Someone's outside pretending to be police. They're not pretending. What? He took another step. His hand was bleeding. There was a cut running across his palm, deep and raw. They're not police, he whispered. They're the ones who take the copies. My mouth went dry. Copies, he nodded. They don't kill you, Madeline. They duplicate you. They replace you. The crash this morning. The woman they found. It wasn't you, but it wasn't someone else either. My head spun. That's not possible. I saw it happen, he whispered. They took my brother first. I thought I was saving him, but I wasn't. I brought them here. Ethan, none of this makes sense. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A key. He pressed it into my hand. Storage room C, end of the corridor. Lock yourself in there until midnight. Don't make a sound. Ethan, a go. He suddenly turned his head sharply toward the ceiling, eyes wide. They're coming. And before I could say anything else, he ran, vanished down a side hallway, the sound of his footsteps swallowed by the dark. I clutched the key in my shaking hand and stumbled toward the corridor. The flickering bulb overhead barely lit the way, but I could make out a row of old steel doors, each marked with faded letters, A, B, C. Something moved behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I reached the door marked C and jammed the key into the lock. It turned with a heavy click. I pushed the door open and slipped inside, pulling it shut behind me. The room smelled like mildew and dust. Old furniture, boxes, and forgotten maintenance tools were stacked along the walls. There was only one dim emergency light glowing faintly near the ceiling. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. My heartbeat refused to slow down. I checked my watch, 3:18 p.m. If what Ethan said was true, I had to stay hidden until midnight. 9 hours, I didn't think I could last 9 minutes. My mind kept spinning, copies, replacements, duplicates. It sounded insane, but the fear in his eyes had been real. I thought about the car accident. The woman who looked just like me, the photo left at my door, the unknown number that knew my every move. What if Ethan wasn't crazy? What if he was right? The light above me flickered once, twice, then went out. I held my breath, waiting for my eyes to adjust, but this time the darkness didn't feel empty. It felt crowded. I heard a soft sound, like a breath that wasn't mine. Who's there? I whispered. Something moved in the corner of the room. Slow, deliberate. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it watching me. The faintest scrape of metal echoed, and then a whisper that sent ice through my veins. You shouldn't have come here. I pressed my back against the wall. Ethan, no answer. The air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me, and then, faintly, I heard something like static, hissing from an old speaker mounted on the wall. It sputtered, then a voice came through, distorted, warped by interference. Madeline, you need to wake up. I froze. It was my own voice. The static rose and fell. my voice looping faintly in the background, repeating those same words again and again. "Madeline, you need to wake up." My knees gave out. I slid to the floor, covering my ears, but the sound kept coming, louder now, layered with whispers that didn't sound human. Then, silence. A faint click came from the other side of the door. The handle turned slowly. Someone was trying to come in. I held my breath. The lock rattled once, twice, then stopped. A voice came through the crack, calm and measured. "MS Carter, it's Officer Reynolds again. We tracked your phone signal to this building. Are you inside?" I didn't move. "MS Carter, please answer. We're concerned for your safety." I closed my eyes, the same voice from earlier, the same tone. But Ethan's words echoed in my mind. They're not real police. The door handle twitched again. "Please, ma'am, we just want to help you." Then softly, like she was standing right against the door, "You'll understand by noon." I stopped breathing. That was the same phrase Ethan had said to me this morning. Word for word, same inflection. The doorknob twisted violently. I screamed, shoving my body weight against the door as it rattled on its hinges. Then suddenly it stopped. A long moment of silence. Then something slid under the door again. A photograph. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was me again, sitting in this same room, taken from behind. The photo was time-stamped 3:26 p.m., the exact current time on my watch. I looked up at the tiny vent above the wall and saw a glint. A reflection, a small black lens. Someone, or something, was watching me. I climbed onto a crate, heart pounding, reached toward the vent, and saw movement inside. Something shifted, pale and quick. A face. My own. I fell backward, hitting the ground hard, gasping. The vent cover rattled, then slowly pushed open from the inside. A hand slid out, fingers thin, skin colorless, nails too long. It pressed against the wall, searching. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the door, unlocking it in one motion. I didn't care what was on the other side anymore. I just had to get out. I flung it open and ran into the corridor. The air outside felt freezing. Lights flickered along the walls, casting long shadows that twisted with every step I took. Behind me, I heard something crawling through the vent, metal bending, scraping. I ran harder. When I reached the stairwell, I could hear the echo of footsteps above. Someone else moving fast. I didn't know if it was Ethan or whatever had been inside that vent. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, lungs burning. I burst onto my floor and sprinted toward my apartment. The door was open. I stopped dead. Inside, everything was wrong. The furniture was there, but not exactly how I'd left it. The lamp was on the wrong side. The photo frames were empty. The smell, sweet, metallic, hung in the air, and standing by the window, back turned to me, was someone who looked exactly like me. Same clothes, same hair, same stance. She turned her head slightly, enough for me to see half her face. Her eyes were dark, empty. "Who are you?" I whispered. She smiled faintly. "I told you not to go to work." Then the lights flickered and went out. When they came back on a split second later, she was gone. The window was open, curtains fluttering in the cold wind. I staggered forward, heart hammering, staring out into the gray afternoon. Far below, the street was quiet. No one there. My phone buzzed from the counter. I picked it up with shaking hands. A new message, no number. Just a single line, "Midnight, basement alone, bring the key." And below it, an attached image. It was a photo of me, sleeping in my bed, taken right now. The clock on my phone struck midnight. The second it did, every light in my apartment flickered once, then went out completely. The city beyond my window seemed to exhale. Even the usual hum of distant traffic vanished, leaving a silence so deep it pressed against my skull. I stood there, gripping the key in my hand so tight my palm ached. Midnight, basement, alone. My body didn't want to move, but something in me, curiosity, fear, whatever was left of reason, pushed me toward the door. The hallway outside was black. The only light came from the faint red emergency exit sign at the far end, casting everything in a dull, bloody glow. I walked barefoot, the floorboards creaking under my steps. Every sound felt amplified. My breath, my heartbeat, the faint rustle of air from the vents. Halfway down the hall, I heard a whisper, "Madeline." I froze. The voice came from behind me, soft, identical to mine. I didn't look back. I just kept walking. When I reached the stairwell, I could see a faint light below, coming from the basement, yellow, flickering. Waiting, I descended slowly, one step at a time. The air grew colder with each level. By the time I reached the bottom, I could see my breath in front of me. The basement door was ajar, swinging slightly, as if someone had just gone through. I pushed it open. The corridor beyond was exactly as I'd left it earlier, long, damp, lined with old pipes and concrete walls that dripped with condensation. The smell of rust and wet dust filled the air. At the far end, room C stood open. A faint light spilled from inside. I stepped closer, my hand trembling as I clutched the key. My footsteps echoed softly, and I could hear something else, a quiet, rhythmic sound like breathing. Someone was in there. When I reached the door, I hesitated. Ethan. No answer. I took a breath and stepped inside. The light source was a single bulb hanging low from the ceiling. Beneath it stood a figure facing away from me. "Ethan," I said again. The figure turned slowly. It wasn't Ethan. It was me. Same clothes, same face, same tiny scar on the eyebrow, but her eyes were wrong. Too still, too empty. She smiled. "You came." My throat closed. "What are you?" She tilted her head, studying me. "You shouldn't ask that. You already know." "No, you've seen it." She interrupted softly. "You saw her body this morning. You saw the reflection in the vent. You know how this ends." My knees felt weak. "I'm still alive. I'm still me." She took a step closer. "That's what they all say." Something inside me snapped. I backed away. "Stay away from me." Her smile didn't fade. "If you run, they'll take longer. If you stay, it'll be quiet." The room felt smaller, tighter. The air was humming, an electrical buzz building behind the walls. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. Her eyes flicked to the ceiling, not me them. And then from the vent above came that same static hiss. It grew louder, sharper, until the light bulb started to flicker violently. The other me stepped back into the shadows as the noise rose to a scream. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears, but the sound wasn't just in the room. It was inside my head. Flashes of memory hit me all at once. The crash, the woman's face, Ethan's terror, the key, the photos, the identical voices. Every memory blurred, fragmented, like I was watching someone else's life. Then it stopped. The silence afterward was so complete it made my ears ring. When I looked up, she was gone. Only the bulb swayed gently above me. I stood shakily looking around. On the floor where she'd been standing was a small black device, like a recorder. I picked it up. The display flickered to life. Playback active, I pressed stop, then play. A voice filled the room, my own Experiment 14. Subject shows strong cognitive resistance. The copy achieved partial assimilation at 11:57 p.m. Full synchronization expected by midnight. I dropped it. The device cracked open on the concrete, the screen splitting. A sound came from behind me. A door creaking open. I turned. Ethan stood there. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes torn, but he was alive. "I told you not to come," he whispered. "Ethan, what is this? What are they doing to me?" He looked around, panicked. "You have to leave now. They'll start the next phase soon." "What phase?" "The exchange." Before I could answer, a deep metallic thud echoed through the basement. The pipes above began to vibrate. Ethan grabbed my arm. "Run." We sprinted out of room C, down the corridor. Behind us, the walls groaned, cracking as lights exploded one by one. Something was following. Fast, heavy, like machinery moving through flesh. We reached the stairwell, but when Ethan pulled the door, it didn't budge. "It's sealed," he shouted. The air filled with a low, mechanical hum, like a generator winding up. Ethan turned to me, desperate. "Give me the key." I handed it to him without thinking. He jammed it into a small panel on the wall I hadn't noticed before. The panel clicked open, revealing a metal hatch with blinking lights inside. He yanked it open. "Go." I climbed in. It was a narrow service tunnel, cold and dark. Ethan followed and slammed the hatch behind us, just as the corridor erupted with light. A blinding white glow poured through the cracks, followed by a sound. High, pitched, inhuman, like static and screaming fused together. We crawled forward, the tunnel shaking around us. "What is that thing?" I gasped. Ethan's voice broke. "Not a thing. A process, they copy us from the inside out. Memories, fears, everything. The originals never survive. Then how are you still alive? He hesitated. I'm not sure I am. Before I could ask, the tunnel split into two paths. Ethan stopped. You go left. It'll lead to the boiler room. There's an exit to the street there. What about you? I have to finish it. Ethan, a go, Madeline, please. He pushed me toward the left tunnel. The last thing I saw was his face lit by the flickering emergency light, half in shadow, half something else. Then he turned and ran the other way. I crawled as fast as I could, heart pounding, until I saw a faint light ahead. The end of the tunnel. When I emerged into the boiler room, I almost cried from relief. The exit door was there, heavy, rusted, but real. I reached for the handle and stopped. A sound came from the other side. A voice, Madeline, it's me, Ethan, but his voice was wrong, too calm, too measured. I found another way out. He said, you can open the door now. My hands shook. Prove it's you. Silence. Then he said softly, you'll understand by noon. My stomach dropped. I backed away from the door. The handle turned once, then twice, let me in. The voice said. I looked around desperately. There was nowhere else to go. Then I saw the reflection. Faint in the metal of the boiler tank. Someone was behind me. I turned just in time to see a figure stepping out from the shadows. It was Ethan, the real one. Don't open that door. He hissed. We stared at each other, then at the door. The handle was still turning. He motioned to me, help me block it. We shoved a metal cart in front of it just as the pounding started. Hard, rhythmic, inhumanly strong. Each hit bent the metal slightly inward. Ethan grabbed a length of pipe and braced himself. If they break through, run. I wanted to scream. Where? He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the door. The pounding stopped. Silence. Then a whisper through the crack. You can't hide from yourself. The metal groaned. And then in one violent motion, the door exploded inward, flinging the cart aside. Standing in the doorway was me. Dozens of me. Each one slightly off. Their faces twitching, eyes black, mouths whispering out of sync. Ethan swung the pipe, hitting one square in the chest, but it didn't react. They moved like marionettes, their motion stiff but relentless. I stumbled backward, grabbing the broken recorder from the floor and hurling it into the boiler's control panel. Sparks erupted, flames burst to life. The heat surged through the room as the air filled with smoke. Ethan turned to me, shouting over the roar, "Run." I ran through the emergency exit as alarms blared behind me. When I hit the street, cold air hit my face. The building shook, and then, an explosion. The windows burst outward in a wave of fire. I fell to the pavement, gasping. When I looked up, the building was burning. No sign of Ethan, no sign of the others. My phone buzzed. One last message. No number. They never burn. I dropped it, watched the screen crack. Above the flames, I thought I saw a silhouette in the window. My own, watching me and smiling. The night was silent except for the faint crackle of burning wood somewhere behind her. Madeline didn't look back. The apartment building that had been her home, her cage, her experiment, her nightmare, was collapsing in orange light. She just kept walking, barefoot, down the empty street that led nowhere. Her phone lay broken in her pocket. Still, sometimes she thought she could hear it vibrate, even though it was dead. Every time she touched it, she half expected another message to appear at midnight. Basement alone, but there was nothing. The streets were empty, the windows dark. The whole neighborhood felt deserted, as if the fire had swallowed the rest of the world. She walked for what felt like hours until she saw the glow of a small roadside diner, the kind that stayed open all night for truckers. Its neon sign flickered weakly, coffee/pie/24 hours. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and cleaning spray filled the air. A tired waitress looked up. "Rough night, honey." Madeline forced a nod. You could say that. She sat in the corner booth, facing the window. The waitress poured coffee without asking. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the woman said with a sympathetic half-smile. Madeline's voice came out dry, something like that. The waitress left her alone. For a while, the only sound was the tick of a clock and the hum of the refrigerator. Then from the far end of the diner, a man slid into the seat across from her. It was Ethan. She didn't jump this time. She just stared. "How are you here?" He smiled faintly, tiredly. "I told you they don't burn." Her stomach turned. "You're not him." He didn't argue, maybe not, but I can tell you what happens next. She pushed her cup away. I don't want to know. You should, he said, because it's already started. She followed his gaze to the window. Outside, across the street, a woman was standing in the glow of the burning sky. Her back was turned. Her hair, her clothes, everything identical to Madeline. She was perfectly still. Then she began to walk toward the diner. Madeline stood up so fast the chair toppled. No. Ethan stayed seated. They follow the originals until one accepts replacement. That's the rule. I'm not accepting anything. He sighed. That's what you said last time. The doorbell above the diner's entrance jingled softly. The other Madeline walked in, same eyes, same movements, even the same tiny bruise on the wrist where she dropped the phone earlier. The waitress didn't look up. She just kept pouring coffee, humming quietly as if nothing was strange. The duplicate walked straight to Madeline's table and sat down beside Ethan. Please, Madeline whispered, backing away. Why me? The copy smiled. Because you survived longer than the others. Others. Every subject fights for a while. Every one of them thinks they're the original, but they can't both stay. Madeline looked at Ethan. You knew about this. He didn't answer. His image flickered, just slightly, like a bad video feed. I'm done running, she said through clenched teeth. The copy stood. Then choose. Madeline's chest tightened. Choose what? To wake up, the duplicate said softly. The lights in the diner began to dim. The hum of electricity filled the air again, the same sound she'd heard in the basement. Ethan faded into static. The waitress froze mid-motion, coffee pouring endlessly over the cup. The world around her blurred. Madeline clutched her head. Stop. But when she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the diner. She was standing in a white room. Sterile, empty, the hum of machines surrounded her. A man in a lab coat stepped forward, clipboard in hand. Subject 14 is conscious. Madeline's voice trembled. Where am I? He didn't answer directly. The synchronization is unstable. Her residual memories are bleeding through. Another voice spoke from behind a glass wall. Proceed with containment. Madeline pounded on the glass. What is this? Through the reflection, she saw something moving on the other side of the glass. Another her. Eyes closed, floating in a tank filled with pale blue fluid. Identical, motionless. The technician turned. We can't have two conscious iterations. Prepare memory extraction. The hum grew louder, high-pitched, vibrating in her bones. No, she screamed. I'm real, I'm me. But her reflection mouthed the same words at the exact same time, and she realized she didn't know which side of the glass she was on. The light inside the lab pulsed brighter until every corner of the room became nothing but white noise. Madeline felt her heartbeat merge with the electric hum, each pulse echoing through her skull. She tried to scream, but the sound didn't escape. It stayed inside her head, multiplying. Subject separation at 98%. A voice said from somewhere behind the glass. The second Madel, and the one floating in the tank, opened her eyes, the same terror, the same recognition. Two sets of pupils locking on each other through the shimmering fluid. The glass between them began to ripple like water. One breath, and then they switched. Madeline stumbled forward, gasping for air, and realized she was the one inside the tank now. Cold liquid filled her lungs. She beat on the glass, but her fists passed through it like smoke. She could still see the other version of herself standing outside, calm, breathing, alive. The other, Madeline turned, meeting the eyes of the men in lab coats. She's stable now, one said. The new Madeline smiled faintly and answered, everything's fine. You can shut it down. The hum began to fade. The scientists turned away. The lights dimmed. And the last thing the real Madeline saw was her reflection. The imposter's reflection, walking out of the room in her body, days later. The morning sunlight poured through the blinds of an ordinary apartment. A phone buzzed on the nightstand. The caller ID read, Officer Daniels, the woman in bed. Madel, enrolled over, picked it up and answered in a calm, even voice. Good morning, officer. We just wanted to confirm your statement. Daniels said, You're absolutely sure the man who warned you, the neighbor, he hasn't returned. Madeline's lips curved into a practiced smile. No, he hasn't, but I'll call if I see him. She hung up and stared at her reflection in the mirror. For a brief second, the reflection didn't move. It looked disappointed. Then it smiled back. A faint hum began again somewhere in the walls, the same tone as before. She blinked and it was gone. Outside, the city was waking up. Cars honked, people shouted, sunlight touched every window. Normal life resumed. But at exactly 12:20 p.m., a power surge rippled through the entire district, and every camera feed glitched for precisely 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, the reflection of every mirror in Madeline's apartment turned its head and smiled directly at the lens. When my neighbor knocked at 4 a.m. and said, "Don't go to work today," I thought he was insane, but by noon I realized he saved my life, or maybe he just saved someone else pretending to be me. If you're still here, you just survived another nightmare from her retaliation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling stories that twist reality before your eyes.